All right, so it's Trampled Underfoot podcast. It's Tuesday evening, and we've got a lot of news to put forth. So here we go. What's going on, Mark?
Not a damn thing. No, lot going on. I mean, this is a busy week. The hard part is going to be starting tomorrow. I've got to completely unload a shed so that I can move it and then put everything back in it. Those are the major announcements from this end. How about on your side?
On my side, the flowers are. It's springtime,
hmm
and the flowers are blooming.
hmm
And there's a tree called the Jamaican caper tree that I
Uh-huh.
planted like 12 years ago, roughly, and
Uh-huh.
it's blooming. And then there's bees coming, and like the petals, it's a very interesting tree because it's got long, whatever you call that part of the flower, um, and so the bees just go there. It's a pretty. It's got purple and it's got white.
hmm
Um, and so I filmed it and whatnot. So that's a good thing, and it smells like candy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the actual smell of the flower, it
hmm
smells like a sweet candy fragrance.
hmm
So that's blooming, and besides that, that's just the one thing that I had on my mind. Everything else is just empty.
Yeah, Linda's flower beds are getting some color now. We were just out earlier today, weeding and doing all that good domestic stuff. She did most of it. I kind of, helped and cheerleaded, but I was working in the shop all day, so I wasn't much help to her on that. Oh man, I tell you what, this getting old stuff is not for sissies because I get wore out anymore real fast. So
Mhm.
it's going to be interesting unloading this shed. This is the one that I had built. Oh, it's been 5 6 years ago now, and it was my storage. My drill press is in there. I've got two big roll around tool chests in there. I've got two 4 foot by 2 foot shelving units, steel shelves in there, and they're all jam packed full of stuff. I mean, I've got all kinds of things in there, and I've got to get it all out so we can move that shed about 20 feet because where it is now, it's right in the middle of everything, right in the way.
Well,
So, got to get
those
it moved.
those are good sort of things to keep the mind and body, occupied
Well,
doing stuff.
yeah, it's one of those. I've got a case of the butt firsts. You know, um, I want to put up the swimming pool, but first I got to move a big pile of dirt. But first I
Mhm.
got to get the driveway finished. But first I got to move this damn shed. But
Mhm.
first I got to unload it. So that's where we sit right now.
Yeah.
All of this is being done so I can put up my swimming pool.
Hey, I'll tell you what. That's what happened to Bud Light. They went butt first, and look what
Yeah,
they got.
well, geez.
You see what they got?
Yeah, well, yeah. Linda says she has a concert this weekend, so she's no help. Yeah, I'm going to be doing it by myself, but that's all right. I mean, I put everything in there. I can take it out and then move it around, so it's no big deal. I'll get it done. It's just I'm not looking forward to it. That's a lot of accumulated junk.
You can always hire help at the local um, tool and hardware installation facility.
Yeah, well, if I put there's about 5 tools that I know for sure I want out of that sucker that I've been looking for, and I'm going to take this as an opportunity to go through my stuff and just get rid of a bunch of it. So maybe if I hire a bunch of people to come help me unload it, they'll steal half of it and I don't have to worry about it. So,
I mean,
yeah, the good stuff is coming in the house. Everything else can sit outside until the shed gets moved. And if I'm lucky, some of it'll get pilfered. Now we just don't have that problem here. We've never had a problem with anything being stolen at all.
no.
Anything. So I'm happy.
For the size of Miami, well, I can't speak for every nook and cranny, but in the almost half a century of existence here,
hmm
I could tell you that Well, I guess at the end of the day it would be a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it depends because we did get my first understanding of robbed
Mm-hmm.
was when I was a kid and my parents were separated.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to live with it was a year about,
Mm-hmm.
and then we came back. But I went to live with my mom um, because she went and took me over there. My two grandparents, her parents,
Mm-hmm.
and my aunt, her sister. And we lived in an apartment. It was a duplex type deal in
Yeah.
front across the way of the expressway. And so there was another house next door that was
Yeah.
attached by one wall.
Right.
And that was the first time. We're talking like 81, 82, or 83, one of the three. I think it was 81 or 82. But in any event, they went, the neighbors did, and pushed in the air conditioner. I had told you this before,
Mm-hmm.
slipped in through my grandparents' bedroom and stole all the items except for, strangely enough, um, all of my toys for that Christmas, because it was Christmas time coming,
Mm-hmm.
were completely intact for some reason. And they looked, and everybody was like, my aunt came back. I came from school. I was a little kid, and they bused me back home. You know, there was a little bus, and private bus. It was a
Yeah.
Catholic school, and they stole everything, our jewelry, or this or that, or this or that. Oh, and then the lady from next door came over, was saying, "What happened?" and this and that, and she said, "Well, at least they didn't steal the child's toys and Christmas gifts."
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt was like, my aunt's very smart. I mean, she's a clinical psychologist. She has master's degree. I mean, she's very bright and stuff. And she grabbed my grandmother, her mom, and said, "Listen, what this lady just said, what she just dropped on us, and so we got to move. We got to get out of here." And
Yeah.
so because yeah, so in any event, they stole everything except my toys.
Mm-hmm.
And later they had other problems as well, that those people. So you never know. But in a city or in a town or in a county where
Mm-hmm.
you have millions of people
Yeah.
uh, with all different types of individual problems, um, some people get the notion that, hey, I need that
Yeah.
item or whatnot, and
Yeah.
so they'll take it from the other person.
Yeah. And well, it's also providing the opportunity. I don't leave a bunch of stuff laying around because I don't want it to suddenly sprout legs and disappear. So, I keep things secure, but we've only had that one problem, that one guy that got into the house and fell asleep on Linda's recliner, and he was promptly hauled off by the sheriff. But that was the only issue we've ever had here. And but I don't slap fate in the face by just leaving stuff out, you know.
Well, I mean, we have no choice but to have the apartment, you know,
Yeah.
the items in the apartment. But yeah, you don't leave a gold Rolex watch sitting on top of the mailbox
No, you don't. You just,
with arrows with two little paper hands going like this.
yeah,
You know,
really.
you try to avoid such thing. But even if you try to avoid, if somebody's got, for whatever reason, so there was one time where back in Sweetwater, I'm playing with my friends and this and that. We're jumping around and stuff. All right, I'll catch you later. And I'm walking back home. And as I'm walking home, my dad's car's there
Uh-huh.
on the corner. And I'm walking and I see someone in my dad's car. It wasn't my dad. And I keep walking. And there's a guy there just going like this with the steering wheel. And I'm walking, and it's almost like some sort of parallel universe type weird thing. What's going on? And I'm a little kid, and I went in and I said, Poppy. I said, Poppy, there's someone in your. I called him Poppy. Poppy, there's someone in your car. And he says, what? There's someone sitting in your driver's seat. And my dad was, this always, for some reason, I have memories of my dad always jumping out of the bed, still in his underwear. He was sleeping when something critical happened and he had to jump. And he did. So he jumped on the bed. He ran out the door and there was a guy in there. He saw the guy. And he said, "Get out of there! I'm calling the police! Get out of the car!" And as the guy got out of the car, he was stumbling. He was a drunkard
Uh-huh.
that just happened to stumble there, and for some reason thought it was, who knows what the heck was going on with the guy.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. This is like
Yeah.
back in the early 80s. And so, but that wasn't stealing.
No, I mean, if you lock up your bicycle, odds are it's not going to get stolen. But if you leave it at the end of the driveway, it's probably going to get swiped, depending upon, how densely populated it is. So I don't give people the chance. Now, having said that, any house that has glass anywhere, if somebody wants to get in, they'll get in.
Oh yeah, windows.
Exactly. So, I've heard it said that locks just keep honest people honest, and that is true. But I still don't believe in slapping fate in the face. So, we'll because I don't I work too hard for the stuff that I've got.
Culture is a funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about windows.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this slightly in a certain way. So a lot of homes here have bars on the windows, which is indicative in many cases for people that aren't used to it, to high crime.
Mm-hmm.
However, although bars have that purpose, traditionally in Cuba, and this goes beyond Cuba, the Spanish world in general. But I can't speak for the Spanish world in general. I'm just speaking for Cuba according through my parents and Miami proper, because it so happens that if people have some sort of stability economically and a home, they'll put bars on their window here. X amount out of 10 will do so. And it's in Cuba, they had these huge windows that were just, and to let the air in and whatnot, but they also had, and it was a sign of economic prosperity, of visual appeal and stuff like that. So there's a lot of, for the properties that are individualistic, not multi structures or whatnot, single family, you'll see a lot of these with bars. It has nothing to do, although the perception would be that, oh boy, it has nothing to do with. However, with that said, you could say what came first, the chicken or the egg, because since they have bars already, we would never know the difference anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I would, because I'm not used to seeing that, I would automatically think high crime area.
Yeah.
That you've got something in there that needs protecting, so you eliminate that point of entry.
Yeah.
So my problem, well, I've got a couple of problems just aesthetically with bars on the window. To me, it looks like, there's a problem there. But I can't help, and I'm not one of these safety first guys, believe me. I just can't help but think about, what about in the case of a fire? How do you get out, or do they open?
No, what happens is that you've never seen inside the kitchen. We have these bottles of adobo. You just sprinkle it on, and we put ourselves. We hold on to a bar, and we just rotate while the house. No, what? That's another way of saying, well, you're screwed. In many homes, and it's the thing, you have to have one, or the thing may have changed now, where there's a mechanism on the gate, on the bars from the inside,
that you can open them from the inside.
You open up, and it opens up.
Oh, okay.
But only from that side. Okay. I don't know how many. I don't know what the story, but yeah, the bars, the perception is a big deal. Your experience growing up, it may not be. There might be one or two.
Well, I only see it in areas where there is a crime problem. It's kind of like downtown. You see, especially in the older towns, the older areas of towns, where they close up the storefront, they lock up to go home at the end of the night, and they have this gate that slides across this this metal gate that
Mhm.
locks,
Yeah.
you know, and you see that in some places, but usually those are in the higher crime areas. But you go downtown here now, and you don't see anything like that. Uh,
Yeah. Over
but
here,
I did see that quite a bit down in the San Francisco Bay Area, though.
okay. Yeah. Well, over here there is that. So I couldn't tell you. I guess I'd have to see. But as far as prior to the Cuban exodus
Hmm.
from the island to Miami,
Hmm.
I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you like what if they had bars or not. But I can tell you for sure that bars are have that dual function.
Hmm.
It's it's brought over from Cuba,
Hmm.
the idea, and it's considered a luxury slash, but it
Okay.
has the principal thing of obviously not allowing people through or whatnot. But you'll
So
see it in multiple neighborhoods.
so it's not necessarily a status thing, but it's just indicative of this
It's a
is my
status.
home.
It's
It
a
is a
status.
status thing.
It's a
Okay.
status thing, cultural thing,
Hmm.
because they had very fancy bars
Yeah.
in the old colonial,
Hmm.
and that kind of like when people would build, they would
Yeah.
install such things to represent that
Yeah.
style.
Hmm.
And so, but it serves the purpose of protecting your ass too. It's just a culture. What I'm getting at is that it's a there's a huge cultural influence for that being.
Okay.
It's almost like dressing at the same time, but it serves the purpose also of the obvious thing, which
Okay.
is
See,
to
I would have never have made a cultural connection. I never would have. That's
yeah, it's a cultural connection. There's a lot of little things like
see,
that.
we're not only entertaining, we're educational as well.
Well, you can call well, yeah, you can
Well,
call
you
it.
just educated me. I would have never have made any kind of a cultural connection to that. I have really had no idea. So
Yeah, and I find it slightly naked myself. Well, remember, at the same time, I've always lived in houses with bars.
yeah.
Um, didn't think twice of it.
Hmm.
Um, and it does give you a sense of well, because if you have windows
Hmm.
without bars,
Hmm.
um, like you said, um, people could go ahead and do what the heck and get through. But if you have bars, all of a sudden you have this obstacle, and there's a sense of like my kingdom,
Hmm.
even at an extreme
Now,
scenario.
well, now that's interesting. When you lived in California, did the home you were living in there, did it have bars?
No,
And what did you think of that? Did you kind of feel naked or unprotected or anything, or did
if
you even pay any attention to?
I was able to obviously process it in that. Well, I was able to process it because and accept it because I know that I'm in a different place and there's different habits and whatnot and this and that. Um, like everything was so different, and I said,
Yeah,
well, this is a different place and this is how people do it, and if everybody does it, then you know
yeah.
it's commonplace. So it's not like you're sticking out like a sore thumb. And here, it's an on and off depending on the. You'll have X amount people that can pay for it, and if
Hmm.
they're Cuban, um, they will install it.
Yeah. Okay.
They will install it in their house
Hmm.
in order to well, these people are they. I mean, I don't know that this is the exact thought. This is
Hmm.
just my sort of like all the knowledge gathering, and from my vantage point, somebody else might say something slightly different, but
Yeah.
it's end of the day, it's a sign of
Hmm.
you know, well, we've got our stuff
Yeah.
together. We've got stuff, and it's a sign of also yeah, status and security as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not just security.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Jim Dockrell says shutters on the stores in malls mostly here. Meanwhile, when the employees are there, their homes are unlocked. Yeah. Um, for a long time, we never bothered to lock the doors unless we were leaving the house. I didn't lock the doors at night, you know. Now I make sure they're locked every night.
Yeah, well, here it's even growing up, you close the door, you lock the door. If somebody was in the home, generally the doors were never locked.
Yeah.
You could leave as a kid
Hmm.
and I'm going out on a bike ride, and you just close the door behind you without the lock because there's people in the house.
Sure.
But if everybody left,
Right.
they
Then
lock
you
the door.
lock up. Yeah.
And a thing that that they used to do, and they still do, I see neighbors do it all the time. When someone's out of town,
Yeah.
when their lights are permanently on day and night,
Hmm.
so, and they would do that as a thing, like, oh, there's people in the house, so if you're a thief, you might want
Right.
not to stumble across people that you're trying to rob.
This, I was like 12, 13 years old, something like that. And my dad thought he was so high class, so cool, because he found this thing at, I don't know what store it was at or what have you, but you plugged it into the electrical outlet and it had a rotary timer on it. And you set, it had a bunch of pins on it, and you pulled one pin at the start of it, it controlled the lights. Then you pulled one pin when you wanted the lights to come on, and then you pulled the pin for every half hour after that. And then when you wanted the lights to turn off, you pushed all the rest of the pins in. And then you plugged the lamp into that. So the lights would come on at like 7 o'clock in the evening, and then they'd go off at like 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And you could set them to turn on and turn off at certain times. So it looked like, okay, somebody's in that room now. And, oh, okay, the light's out. Nobody's in that room. Oh, the lights are back on. That means somebody's home. He thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I just,
I tripped the security of a Best Buy. I don't know if you have Best Buys out there.
Yeah.
Years ago, I I um I was flagged by the people working there observing. Um, I had gotten out. I had a short window, and I knew exactly the things that I needed.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't know that particular store or something to that effect. I went in, and I went from one place to the other, and then back to the place that I started. And my pattern, like, I reasoned this out. Nobody told me, but I reasoned it out. So I could be completely wrong, or I can be somewhat right or somewhat wrong. But if I had to bet money, I know exactly due to what happened next. I was walking around, but very, what you say, nonchalant. Like, I owned the place in terms of I knew where to go, but then I would leave because they didn't have the item. So I would check in another place where that electronic do hit. I have a secondary home to it.
Yeah.
But I was not playing games. I was going like this. But I did that a few times, and I was thinking on should I or shouldn't I, the alternate that they had there and stuff. And I did that for a little bit. So it looked like I was scattering around the place. Like, you could imagine a camera looking down.
Yeah.
This one, everybody else is like zombie mode, like looking at and I'm like wing, 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 like a pinball machine. And I had a short window because I had to get home. The next day is going to roll in, so you have a short window, and you got to get and you want the thing that you want. And I eventually stopped in front of like the hard drives and whatnot. This is years ago, like 10, 20 years ago. And one of the employees, well, before that, had started slightly following me around.
Yeah.
Until I paused at that one place, and he came right next to me. So suspicion flags were all red alert. I had no intention nor even the thought,
right,
until he brought the question into my mind. But to them, they have no idea. And from my thing, I'm just living in my world. Even though the pattern, it may be weird, it had nothing to do with anything. But to them, it's something. So he came close and he started asking me questions and stuff and being friendly. But it was so, and so I realized what he was doing, and that turned me off. I was going to buy the thing, And then my mind started calculating, and I said, yeah, I have been walking around in strange patterns. And that's strange, but I assumed from their perspective at that
Well,
moment.
you look confused. You look like you kind of knew what you wanted, but didn't know. So it's
Mhm.
like my being on that side of the customer service. My first thing is, can I help you find something?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Well, but they don't see, but here's the double-edged sword of that. You would hope,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know about your area,
Mm-hmm.
but people, you're lucky. So if that were the case, if they were to come up to you and say, "Hey, sir, how can I, what do you? Is there any direction that you need? What section of the?"
Yeah.
But I don't know about your area, but in my area, you're lucky to get. Once you buy a thing, oh, thank you so much for stopping by. You're lucky if you get any of that crap here. And notice how I treated. I said crap. Any of those details, those fine
Mm-hmm.
civilization-like details.
Oh no, it's big out here. It's big out here. You need to be friendly. Well, number one, it's a small town. So odds are if you come into that store once, you're probably going to be back. So let's start things off on the right foot. And, you know, now if
Mm.
you're a regular customer, they'll probably talk your ear off while they're checking you out or, helping you find whatever it is you need to find. But oh, yeah, all the pleasantries are there. But that's supposed to be their job. If they see somebody kind of walking around, the look, they're walking around kind of like, okay, would it be over with the computers or would it be over with the games or where would it be? That's their job is to come up and can I help you find something? You know?
One good thing about my
Mhm.
America, and I'm saying mine because it's from my vantage point. We all shared in it in our respective ways, and I didn't think about it
Mhm.
much until we've talked within the past few years, sitting through and stuff, and
Mhm.
ideas start to combine. Even if a person is not during their job, their work,
Mhm.
even if they're not individually satisfied with their personal life,
Mhm.
they shelve that
Yeah.
so that when the customer arrives, you are making the experience as comforting because they're there for an objective and your job is to facilitate that
Right.
accomplishment, which is for
Right.
you to get their money and then acquire the item which is important for them, and they can be on their way and happy and have a good thought about the
Yep.
experience. Well, that idea, which was I quickly attached or understood just by the jobs that I would work. I
Mhm.
mean, sure, they give you training and this and that, but that's the job. A
Yeah.
person comes in, you're not there to judge them, think about them in political terms,
Or
whether or not
Mhm.
you're not there to put forth your internal processes.
Yeah, cry on their shoulder about how your life sucks and all this other good stuff. You're just supposed to do your job and be courteous
That's
and
it.
hopefully helpful to the point that where if they are thinking about something, they'll come back to your place, you know.
That's the idea.
Because without the customer, there's no reason for you to have your doors open, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And you do make judgments as you see people and the way they interact,
Mhm.
but you try to uh, well, that's neither here nor there. Like, I'm remembering through all the different
Mhm.
job experiences and attending to people and stuff. You're there to make it as pleasant. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Out of the many different jobs one of the jobs, I worked as a marketing guy, and I had a
Uh-huh.
truck that I would drive, and inside the truck was um a soccer goal,
Mhm.
unassembled, and soccer balls, and stacks of cornmeal, which
Mhm.
is called maseka,
Okay.
which was unheard to me um, until that time. They said, "Do you want to work for Maseka?" And I was like, "What's that?"
What?
And they said, "Maseka is what, Mexican families use," and and I was, "Oh, well, what is it?" So the concept, just to understand, and we talked about like the Latino culture
Mhm.
and stuff, um, after show a few weeks back and stuff, and this kind of time, um, the concept is so broad of people from different backgrounds, where something that may be normal, and I'm sure that it's normal out west now,
Mhm.
looking back, but it's also normal here I didn't know until it's also normal here in certain places in Miami, where you
Mhm.
have communities that come and do
Yeah,
certain jobs, and that they, the certain field jobs and whatnot, and there's whole communities in Homestead, that purchase that frequently, and there's other groups that purchase it,
sure.
or other, um, but I had never heard of it. Well, anyways, my job was to sell this item that I had never heard of. They give you your instructions and this and that, and then I would set up a little soccer thing, and then the kids could come and they knock a soccer ball into the goal, and they could win a prize. And so I would set up in front of all these places in supermarkets that I had never been to here in South Florida. Um, and the supermarket sold items that I was not aware of, because it's not part of, I guess you could call it, the
Mhm.
extended Cuban experience. There's a
Mhm.
big difference, which we've talked about, between a Caribbean world and
Mhm.
the people that occupy it,
Mhm.
and these other locations. But fair enough, you know, I did that, and my job was to get them to be happy about the experience, so that
Right.
that brand would be accentuated in a
Mhm.
positive light. So they got gifts, and they would ask me questions, and like I'd have to refer to the thing, because I don't know what the heck is going on in reality. Like I don't have, you know what I'm saying, the
Yeah.
backdrop of it as a cultural. Later I found that they use this to make tortillas, and the cornmeal, and it's basically cornmeal. You can make
Mhm.
grits with it, or I would assume, I don't know, I didn't go that far
Well,
into it,
it's
but
it's 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 ground pretty fine, but yeah.
it's grounded corn.
Mhm.
And so the point is that, um you have a job, and you have all the whatevers that may go on or not go on
Mhm.
is not even secondary. It takes a backseat in the bus to
Yeah.
the forward, facing of the person, in order to make that brand or that item or that
Yeah.
store, look as best as possible.
Yeah. Managing the casino, I had to constantly, especially with new people, make that point that, look, you can be having the absolute worst day of your life. The thing is, you can't let the people out there on the floor know it.
Right.
So, yes, it is a game. Yes, you are on stage. You have to put on the smile.
Hmm.
You have to fake being happy, because your job is to make them happy. So they'll keep putting money in those machines. And you could be having a bad day, but you need to keep them smiling. In order to do that, you got to smile too.
That's correct.
You
Yeah.
can't be the downer that rains on their parade.
It ruins it.
Yeah, it does.
And it could trigger a memory for
Uh-huh.
a customer, that will make
Yeah.
it so they never return again.
Yeah, it sure can.
Hmm.
Because if they have a bad time, they're always going to associate that bad time with your establishment.
Yeah.
Robin says, sounds like working at Disney, working in a casino. In some ways, it was. You are on stage. You're there. You're there to make sure they're having a good time, whether they're winning or losing. It's easier to do when they're winning, trust me. But I'll give you an example. There was one St. Patrick's Day, and I remember it because for St. Patrick's Day, I would go in kilt. And so I'm there in my kilt. I've got my, tool belt on and I've got my, the casino shirt on and everything. And I'm, got I got a ring of keys that must weigh 5 pounds because I have to be able to unlock everything. And we had this one bar that had $1 poker machines, and it was on a progressive jackpot. And the jackpot was up there. It was a little over $7,000. And the bar was full. I mean, when it gets to that point, what the bartender does is he starts taking names. And when somebody decides they've had enough or they're broke and they get up and they walk away, they'll call out that name. They'll reserve that machine, call out that name, and that person's got just a couple of minutes to get over there if they want to play that machine. Well, it was jam packed full, and people were losing. I mean, they were losing big time. But me being, hey, showtime, it's all about me and my goofy rear end running around in a kilt out there, telling jokes and hooting and hollering. They made a major mistake in giving me a microphone that would play over the PA system from making announcements. Well, the big mistake is handing me something like that because I'm going to use it, and I'd use it for anything. And I started doing the sportscaster, walk up, oh man, we have a 3 of a kind over here. All right, the coins are kicking out real fast. How you feeling about this today, coach? And you just put the microphone in their face and they're looking at you like, the hell are you on, Mark? And do
But it
this.
made for a good atmosphere.
They were having a ball, laughing their butts off
Yeah.
and losing their butts off. But they didn't care because they were having a good time.
Yeah.
And I'm talking people were putting $300, $400, $500 into these ding dong machines, $4 at a hand. But they were having a good time about it. And the bartender later grabbed me and he said, "Thank you for doing that." I said, What do you mean?" He said, "You came over here and you saved my ass because people were getting angry. They were getting mad. And you just diffused everything." I said, "Well, I didn't know that's what was going on." He says, "I know you didn't. And it worked, but it worked." So, but that was my job. It was my job to be the butt of the joke, to be goofy, to get people laughing, to get people smiling, because maybe they'll come back the next time they think about coming down to play poker or something like that, or a slot machine or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
That's very good. Yeah. Do you
and
know? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but that was the fun part of the job, was just, uh, you know, there are certain levels of taste you had to adhere to,
Mhm.
but, you know, I mean, I carried around one pouch on my tool belt. Special was full of Tootsie Rolls. And I just walk around and pass out Tootsie Rolls down a whole line of slot machines. They're like, "What's this?" Well, if you don't want to give it back. "Oh, no, I just wondered what's going on. I just looked like you needed a chocolate fix." Well, that's not chocolate, but it's close. And
What
it was goofy stuff like that.
one of the errors also that occurs, it's not just the employee. It depends on the scenario, but it's also the chain of command and how the company itself and the people that are in charge um, set the tone of the workplace and whatnot. So if negativity is pushed in, and there's situations where it's high end stress and whatnot and this and that,
Yes.
but there has to be um yeah, the problem is that it's not just the employee. It could be,
Mhm.
but there's something behind all that as well. There's
Mhm.
many factors involved in why the decline of good service and or good manners may or may not occur. It could be just placed on the person in the front line, but you don't know series of things that make up that workplace that could create a situation where the employees are just over it
Right.
and whatnot. One does not know. It doesn't excuse any of the rest, but it speaks towards companies need to be a little bit more in tune if they run into that sort of thing. Um,
Well,
You know.
there's a time and place for everything. I will agree with that. And there are many reasons. There's a lot of factors involved in what you're talking about because
Mhm,
when upper level, they want to be professional. And I get that. But you also have to remember context and you have to remember setting. Okay. People
mhm,
go to a casino to have fun. So already their spirits are a little bit up. They may have already had a drink or two. They're probably having a drink while you're over there talking to them or just, whatever.
mhm,
It was a small local place. Just about all of them were regular customers. Not all, but quite a few were. So you get to know certain personalities, but they're there to have fun. So why not help the issue?
mhm.
I don't have to stand back all stone faced and lean up against one corner and just, play Yertle the Turtle, king of all I survey. No, get out there with the folks and talk and yak and, hoot and holler with them when they win and, stuff like that. It's now, if I was in a law office or when I was in real estate, that's not a place for that. This is a
Mhm.
serious situation, so you've got to be serious and
Right,
you have to be professional.
right.
But it depends, Also, I think a lot of people are more circumspect because they don't want to be taken the wrong way. They're afraid of offending somebody in some way. So they tend to, withdraw a little bit and hold back. Now, that may be there by choice, and it may also be there by directorate from up above,
Mhm.
It may become policy. Well, no, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do the other. Well, okay, you just took away all my fun, but all right.
Yeah.
You know, um, so it may be self imposed, it might not be self imposed. And also, I'll just go ahead and say it, we are a lot more self centered these days than I think we used to be 20 years ago.
You think?
Yeah, I do. We have, we're more egocentric. I don't mean egotistical, but more egocentric. I don't know, more self absorbed, I guess,
As a society,
as a society. Yeah.
I don't know.
So there are a whole bunch of variables in there, too many to mention, but
The problem is that it's a so the
mhm,
idea of society is a difficult one always. And
it
we've
is.
run into that issue as well
Mhm.
when I mention stuff like, well, you know,
Well,
one thing is my perception of society
mhm,
according to the things that I see set up in front of me, and
mhm.
another thing is the reality of it. The reality of it is that no matter how much, to a point, the reality of it is that no matter how much I know of society, I'm picking from my perspective according
Right.
to what I see, and that doesn't even begin to, you know what I'm saying,
Mhm.
quantify what that necessarily.
Well,
It's just, it's a difficult one.
but if you think about your circumstance there anecdotally in your neighborhood, you've probably got your choice of three or four little stores that you could go to, and you have your favorites. You know, do you find you go to certain places because they have a better selection of stuff, or because you prefer this store, these people that work there? Or does that even enter into it? It's just, oh, it's a store, I'll go here.
No, I have two criteria:
Hmm.
nearness, distance,
Hmm.
and price.
Okay. Now, do you get better service at, like, say, Walmart than you do at that your favorite local store? Or is it, because I find smaller stores to be a little bit more friendly and a little bit more open.
No, but both of if we're talking groceries, there's plenty of options,
Mhm.
but I'm more of like in and out, get out of my way while I'm shopping.
Yeah.
I'm more so what happens is that because it's really true. I don't, and there's some places where for some reason,
Mhm.
everybody and you can't get away from it, but there's some places that are good examples of it more so than the other places where people for some reason,
Mhm.
all of them are on slow mo.
Yeah. 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 I know that. I know that well.
And it's like, dude, like in my mind, when I step into a store, I've already gone through the store, gotten the items I need, and I'm back at home sitting down.
Yeah.
In my mind, when I go, and that may not be a good, so I don't leave the house with like a blank stare. Um, no, I leave the house. My mind already
Yeah.
processed. I went there, got this, and I'm back at home already. And
Mhm.
it's all just a matter of me getting through all the obstacles to go and come back.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the lack of surprise, not that there isn't surprises along the way, but the suspending, I don't know if I can do it any other way. It's just how I am. I'm already thinking, I'm out the door, I know the goal that I have to get, and then in order to get back here, I'm not going out necessarily, but along the way there's little nuggets that you encounter, maybe a
Mhm.
beautiful tree,
Well,
just whatever.
okay. You've told me several times about the little places that you can go to there where you can walk up to the window and get a coffee and a pastry or something and go away.
Hmm.
You have your favorites, right?
Hmm.
Why? Is it because of the people or the pastry, or do they just make the coffee just right? Or what keeps you going to that one?
They used to be better back in the day.
Hmm.
All of the places or all the places that I go, they used to be better,
Hmm.
and now there's this, it's not as good. So why do I go to the one instead of the other, and there's two of them, there's one across the street from the other.
Hmm.
For some reason they're just right there, and you can see that all throughout Miami.
Yeah.
Like all throughout Miami you will find
Hmm.
numerous little windows and people stopping, smoking, drinking coffee, eating pastries. Then they get back in, they go back to work, they go back to their home, whatever
Hmm.
the case is. And it's 24 hours in many of the cases.
Yeah.
People show up at all hours. But the one that I go to, it's because it's close. There's two of them, and I choose the one over the other because maybe I can't remember now. It's at one point I didn't like the pastries that the one had compared to the other.
Okay. So it is the food. The
No,
pay. The
I'm remembering now that
Okay.
that is a factor that played into it.
Okay.
And there's two of them, and that was one factor that I
Okay.
remember, that the pastry wasn't that good.
But
So
did the people enter into it at all? The people, the service you get in one place versus another, how friendly they were, or anything like that?
typically, the lady behind the thing is a Cuban lady,
Mhm.
and this would not work in English, but in Spanish, it's like, "Welcome, my love. What do
Mhm.
you want today, my love?"
Mhm.
Like that. Those
Yeah.
are the words,
Mhm.
but in English,
Mhm.
um, or my life.
Mhm.
My life, what do you want?
Mhm.
Um, and so there's this caramel,
Yeah.
apple dipped experience and that was the traditional experience.
Mhm.
Slightly flirting, not sexual, but
Right.
um, personal.
Mhm.
Something that typically in the United States you would not see in any other scenario unless
Yeah.
maybe some Italian thing or something. Well, no, I mean, you're talking about, well, you could say Southern,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
I was getting ready to say I've been called sweetie and darling in more Southern restaurants than I have by my parents and grandparents combined.
so if there's anything to associate it with, it
Mhm.
would be that you just said. So
Yeah.
they
Okay.
have that. Not so much anymore, although there's a few key ladies every now and then that I go that have
Mhm.
that magic.
Mhm.
And you might think it's a shallow, or not you, but just in general, anybody saying, well, why would someone need to call one sweetie or my love or my sweetheart? This or, um, it's nothing to do with anything other than it's typical of the culture from back when
Yeah,
that
the
gives
era that they were brought up
it
in.
gives
Yeah.
it a nice little blanket to wrap
Hmm.
up that experience in.
Yeah.
No one thinks anything twice of it.
Hmm.
Like they say, "Oh my love, oh my darling, thank you very much. Here's
Hmm.
some tip and this and that. Okay, bye. That's it." But any person in a proper today's mode
Hmm.
would be all sorts of shocked with oh, those are
Well,
all offensive key points, and we must let us bring one of our groups so that we protest in front of the. I mean, it just so there's little things that are cultural that seem
hmm,
antiquated, like how dare a man or a woman call the other one sweetheart without knowing them from Adam,
right.
but
But it's
it,
also
in the context,
personality driven.
it's within the context, is
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
It's also personality driven because I mean, you get the stereotypical truck stop cafe waitress who'll be, you want some more coffee, sugar? Or, hey, sweetie, you need more coffee over here? You need more coffee, darling? Something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
No, she's not wanting me to take her out on a date. It's just,
Hmm.
but not all of them do it. It's
Yeah.
just, but there's usually that one who's just a little bit louder, who's
Mhm.
always laughing, who's always smiling. And yet but it's true. I mean, just about every restaurant down south has that one waitress that does that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's just a personality thing. But
it's
yeah,
a very there's a lot there
yeah.
because it makes me think of other things.
Well, my grandmother was from Texas. So if when she was alive, if I would have brought you over to meet her, she'd have just gone, "Oh, hi, sugar, how are you?" And she'd have give you a great big hug. That's just the way she was. The minute you walked in the door, you were family, and you were going to be treated like family. And that's just it.
Well, it's funny you say that because there's a technique that happens in, let's call it, although it's not restricted to, but let's call it the Latin world to
Hmm.
include, let's say, a lot of, not just in the Americas, but across, let's
Hmm.
say, Europe, let's say from France to Spain does it, France, Italy does it, and all those, where when you meet someone, it depends on the context. You're not going to a store and they're going to do it, but if you meet someone, you go to someone's home, they give you a kiss on the cheek.
Yep. Cheek, cheek. No. Yeah.
Well, it depends. Some
Yeah.
people in the Cuban tradition, I guess it would be the Spanish tradition in general. It's just a cheek to cheek touch, or you
Hmm.
can even slightly pass the cheek and
Right.
just go moi,
Yeah.
and then you're done.
Yeah.
But
Air
like
kiss. Yeah.
right, but in other cultures, it's like moi 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 moi
Yeah.
moi moi, and then you're done. And so, but to some people,
Hmm.
that is completely inappropriate. I mean, what the heck
Yeah.
is that? And
We don't tend to do that here. Oh,
right, well, because
it,
it's not part of the culture from,
mhm.
let's say, anywhere in the northwestern Europe. It's not necessarily
Well,
uh
yeah, it's all over Europe. It's all over Europe. In fact, I don't remember what show I was watching, but I was watching some show. They were talking about the differences in other cultures. Like in the UK, it's one cheek, right side first, then left side.
Are you telling me that when people meet in the UK, they kiss
We're talking
themselves?
formal. We're talking formal introductions. We're talking formal introduction. Okay.
That's first. I mean, I'm not saying that they wouldn't necessarily, but it doesn't seem like a cultural thing from any, like, it doesn't seem like a cultural thing for England or any of the British Isles. It doesn't seem like a Germanic thing. It doesn't seem.
I,
It
I
doesn't
never
seem.
witnessed. I never witnessed it in Germany. I never witnessed it in Germany, so I can't speak to that. But they were talking about in France, it's right cheek, then left cheek, then back to right. Then you get down to southern France, it's two on each side. And
Mhm.
then they talk about Italy and then some parts of Spain and this and some parts of Spain it's that and every this, that, and the other. And I was like, But in America, it's like you're lucky if you get a on one side.
I've
It's just not.
never,
It's just not done.
I've,
It's just
I've
nothing
never,
that we do here.
I've never seen any of my friends that are not
Hmm.
of the greater Spanish world. I have seen friends with French and with other, let's say, Southern European, because there's a difference
Italian.
at the level of that and other levels, but there's a difference in the attitudes or cultural little
Mhm.
nuggets that regions
Mhm.
share, and that doesn't seem to be one of them because I remember in I mean I don't remember specifically, but in a general sense with friends and stuff, and uh, if I went to a place where it was a lot of Cuban people, you would see that a lot. But in other instances where there weren't, that was absent. Like it was, and to me, I prefer not to kiss. But then again,
Right.
I grew up. It's funny. I grew up here, and there are plenty of Cuban, but it was more of a hodgepodge of different people. And so, to me, I could go without the kiss. Like I don't. Like, to me, and in fact, I've offended a few people, because my thing is to just. Let's put it this
Shake
way.
hands.
I've gone and people are there, and I extend my hand,
Mhm.
and the person. I've even had this. The person moves my hand and comes up and gives me a kiss, like saying, "How are you kidding?
Yeah.
Is this how we're gonna start this conversation?" And I didn't think twice about it. So I have the environment, the custom, the this and that, aware of it. I prefer the one because who wants to be? I mean, come on, give me a break. But you have to accept certain norms in certain situations, so you go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
But it's a very weird thing. It's a very weird thing when you think about it because you're kissing someone that you may not necessarily know, and it's like, why can't a handshake just do it? So
Exactly. Yeah. Well, just looking it up here, cheek kissing is very common in the Middle East, the Mediterranean, Southern, Central, and Eastern Europe, the Low Countries, the Horn of Africa, Central America, and South America.
yeah, that's what I thought. I didn't know
Mhm.
about Eastern Europe that much, but it makes sense because Eastern Europe goes either way
Mhm.
towards culture and people groups. They're not only Southern European, like what you call like a gradient of traditions, but also
Mhm.
Northern Europe. So you would see, but yeah, yeah, I don't see. I mean, I did hug JP but I sure didn't give him a wet one on the cheek. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, what can you say? I mean, they get really into it. They talk about in Portugal and Spain, women kiss both men and women,
Mm-hmm.
and men only kiss women.
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't kiss the guy on
The
the cheek.
exception between father and son or brothers.
Mm-hmm.
For men, the most common salutation is a handshake.
Yep.
And that's been the same with me. You know, a man, you do the firm handshake. A woman, you do a gentle hold. I don't shake a woman's hand. I'll just kind of take hold and
Yeah, you don't
then just
shake the woman. So I agree with you. So with a man, you give them a firm handshake.
mhm.
Not too long. You're also not trying a contest here of who has the strongest grip. You're giving them a grip to show that
Uh-huh.
the inferred thing is that we're men here. Hello,
Mhm.
respect,
Yep.
and you're welcomed. And and with women, you touch their hand and a little thing at best, maybe a little slight nod. If at best, you're not
Mhm.
supposed to shake their hand.
No, yank their arm off and wave it
Yeah,
around as a trophy.
so that's a given. That's I'm with you on that one. That's a given. And what was the other one you said?
Um, just basically that in most of Europe, um, women will kiss men or women,
Mhm.
but in Spain and Portugal, men only kiss women.
That's right. You don't kiss and that was the same thing here. Um,
Mhm.
that's exactly the same thing. We would never. There's no
They
world in which you kiss another. That doesn't even.
They say, however, men kissing in Spain may occur,
Family,
particularly when
family.
congratulating close friends or relatives.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah. If it's
okay,
something like that, yeah. But with family,
right?
it's not like so. I've done that all my life. You kiss your family on
Hmm.
the cheek. I mean, you
Right?
don't smother them. It's just a
No,
quick. It's
right?
like it's like you put your cheek towards them, and
Hmm.
then into the air, you
And
go "Mwah," and the other one
yes,
"Mwah,"
that's
and so,
exactly where I was getting ready to go. Cheek to cheek, and a kiss in the air is extremely popular.
but here's the thing. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I don't know the history of it.
Hmm.
I know that I've done it all my life. It's just what you did. You would see as a little kid, and everybody's kissing each other, and you're like,
I
"Well,
don't
I'm
want no
jumping
part
in
of
this
that.
one, then.
Yeah.
I guess I'm jumping in this." And but you become that becomes part of the custom. But vice versa, or not vice versa, but parallel to that,
Hmm.
growing up in Miami, you also have other people that don't do that,
Right.
which we've just mentioned. And so I learned that it's appropriate, but yet it's not appropriate in certain things. And it's like you get this. So what's
Right.
the best middle ground? I obviously is a handshake at
A
best,
handshake. Yeah.
and if you're really, you could do like a little quick hug,
Well,
but but it's like, to me, it's only worthwhile doing that with friends that you haven't seen in a long time, as a hey dude, or for sure with family. But
well,
beyond that,
well, I always give my grandson a big hug, but only because I know it bugs him. I know he doesn't like it, but and I warned him about it. I said, I'm going to find the soft spot, then I'm going to exploit that.
do you wrap your arms around
Yeah,
and
I
give a
wrap
kid?
my arms around and I pat him a couple of times on the back and then I let him go, but
No,
only because I know he doesn't like it.
no, I'm saying like, does one wrap their hand and kiss, like, let's say in every situation where like say a police officer is giving you a ticket and you thank you officer, and you give it, like, there's
No, no.
situations. So why would one do it to a stranger, like here in meetings for the first time? You see that, but
Well,
why not just a simple hey, nice to meet you, or handshake, and you're done? No, it has to
yeah.
be physical. You have to
Well,
rub whatever
it
stank you
it
have
it
on the other
yeah, it
person's
it it
stank.
depends on the situation and what's going on and everything. More often than not, a simple handshake will do. But it also depends on the person, and you can see because some people don't even like a handshake,
Mhm.
you know, and men especially are so afraid of women anymore that you'll see the bow is starting to come back, just a slight one. He'll kind of, oh, hi, how you doing? Good to meet you. And
Yeah,
that's about it.
yeah,
Because men are just afraid of being liberal, of being labeled as that creepy guy, you know. So it's a very much a hands-off thing anymore. Now, me being the goofball that I am, I'll reach out to shake a hand. And if they decide they don't want to shake a hand, okay, I'm fine with that. Now, Jim is talking about here fist bump.
mhm.
I think the person that initiates the greeting, if somebody comes up, hey, how you doing? Comes up with a fist, I'm more than willing to join in. If they come with an open hand for a handshake, I'm ready to join in. But I think the person that initiates the greeting decides. I can't come in with an open handshake and you go, yeah, give me a fist bump. I mean, what's that? Come on, no, I got my hand out here. Shake it or don't.
Okay, two unrelated facts.
Mm-hmm.
One, because you mentioned St. Patrick's Day, and I had just seen this, and I did a little bit of research, but not too much.
Mm-hmm.
Sounded reasonable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then another one, unrelated, but we're because my mind, there was some electrical shortaging in my, and I remembered. Um, St. Patrick's Day.
Mm-hmm.
When was it first? Where was it first celebrated and documented?
St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah, you would not, without looking. Don't look. You
No,
would
my
not
hands have never left the ends of my arms.
you would not even begin to imagine.
Hong Kong.
No, now you're
Oh.
see now you're
um, see, I don't think it was first celebrated in Ireland.
no, it wasn't. According to what I read,
And in fact, I read something about it that the people in Ireland had no idea that St. Patrick's Day was such a big thing until some came to America and then went back. And you wouldn't believe what they're doing in America for St.
yeah,
Patrick's Day.
yeah, they started I think in the early 1800s doing it,
So it
but
must have been
okay,
here in America somewhere.
it was in the Americas. It was
Mhm.
in St. Augustine under Spanish control
Really?
Florida. Yeah,
Really?
because they had a large population. Remember, the Irish were Catholic,
Yeah.
and they were partners with the
Mhm.
Spanish. So
Mhm.
the Spanish and this idea, the Spanish and the Irish were basically very kind to each other and loving due to the religious and the history.
Mhm.
Um, and so there was this professor of history that went digging, and
Mhm.
it became like a few years back. It could have been 10 years back. I'm not sure exactly, but according to what I read, and he found a document where they're mentioning San Patricio celebrado, and and they talk about the Irish. They even know the Irish priest that was there to commemorate and whatnot, and
Wow.
that they had festivals and whatnot, this and that. So, and this became a huge controversy, which I was unaware of, but I ran into it and I did a little bit of research in it, and
Wow.
people were like grinding their teeth on it, especially
Mhm.
up in the New England area. Um, and a lot of people, because of the Spanish, again, there's always this thing with the Spanish, and I've told you before in the back, there's a historical religious power situation between the Catholics and the Protestants, between that,
Right.
although we may not have it being fought in our conscious, but due to the history of whatnot,
Right.
it's been so. Um, the people, so some people are recognizing it due to the
Mhm.
documentation, but other people are like, no way, it's up here. Some people in Philadelphia or Boston, or
Yeah.
so so there's that. But I haven't
Well,
looked further into it other than a little bit of research. So they have all the names. It was researched by a professor. A lot of people have looked into it. Other people don't want to,
mhm.
and I think it's due to cultural variations. But St. Patrick's Day first, and it
Well,
was in the 16. I believe it was like 16 something. I believe
yeah.
in St. Augustine, Spanish St. Augustine, Florida. So I thought that was a big one to mention.
Mhm.
What do you?
Yeah.
What,
That was that well, that's it, that's one of those little interesting facts that I'm going to remember now. But
yeah,
I see, because I knew for a long, long time it wasn't a big thing in Ireland. It wasn't a big, huge celebration. But then when they started seeing what Americans were doing, because I
hmm
mean, the big, huge celebrations in Boston and Chicago, and I mean, just all over the place, the Irish were like, well, hell, they're celebrating their Irishness over here. Why the hell don't we get involved in this? And it started to become a thing. It's still
yeah.
not as big there as it is in America, but what can you say?
Well, some people, now that you're saying this, some people were arguing, yeah, well, fine, like well, fine, but St. Augustine doesn't have the oldest continuous celebration, and so they started
Yeah, well,
splicing hairs on it. But
sure.
anything to one of the trends that I see, and it's a human thing, I guess, but there's more to it, is
Mhm.
to eliminate or put on the bottom shelf where the dust gathers of certain nuances of history, and
Yeah,
then people have the popular the popular history view, which
right.
excludes a whole set. I have a few working themes in my head which are so difficult, and I'm not skilled. I've not been trained but I can think it. I wish that I would like to make some little sort of like writing things that I might turn into videos, but it's so monumental. Not the idea, It's a simple, and
Yeah.
it's not like it's not. But to put it all in the jigsaw puzzle so that it sounds cohesive and all that, it's such a you'd have to be invested in it. And so I have these things floating, but um, this whole idea of, and we've mentioned it before in the past, of what is it, history, where people in the popular world, culturally, they think that history is what these documentaries are providing us. It's a form of history, but without the nuance of the actual of
Right.
details that create variation.
Right.
So, um, so people get all wigged out on documentaries and stuff. Like
Well,
recently, they had this Cleopatra thing
hmm
where they portray. I don't know if you saw it. Did you see where they
no, I don't
portrayed?
know.
So they portrayed Cleopatra as African, like
Okay.
like 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 Saharan African,
hmm
whatnot. And people have been wigging out about it because my
Why?
conclusion is, to them,
hmm
these videos and such that are put out is, and there's British people, one guy that was arguing some points, to them, these, you can, I'll say it this way, if you want the nuance, you could go and read a book where they have all the details and they have all the footnotes and you can explore the thing, and the information is there so that you know the knowing of the knowing of the knowing, so that you have the better understanding. But if you're not willing to do that and willing to digest the video,
Well,
then what you have is, you have a prepackaged thing, and the decisions made to leave things on the cutting room floor is what they decided, either through political reasons, cultural reasons, financial reasons,
or just
time allotment reasons.
yeah.
Now, all those things, but getting wigged out about, and I can see why, because they're suggesting, oh, they're robbing us of our heritage, and they, this happened a few weeks ago, but these people are internalizing
Mhm.
from somewhere in Europe and in America too. But it's dude, the level of
Well, I think you have to be looking for something to get offended over to in order to go that route because okay, so the argument is about Cleopatra being portrayed by someone who is Saharan African.
black.
Well, I mean,
She wasn't. They're right
okay,
about her not being,
okay. Well,
but they don't know
but
why they don't know why. I don't know that
but
they don't know, but they don't they don't
but
know.
but but that's what they're going to focus on.
Yeah, because they're saying, here's the problem: these people that are not willing to invest in further understanding are
Mhm,
quite willing to make judgment calls. And why wouldn't they? Because to them, their world starts and ends in their knowledge area,
mhm.
on that topic, where it starts and ends. Even though there's more over here and more behind over here, their little stretchy stretch of knowledge is there. They're not willing to go this way or that way. This is what they've got, and the documentary represents, a damage to history and this and that. They are correct without having the willingness to go, and explore more, but they're still correct, even though they have the lack of understanding, that
Okay. Well,
Cleopatra was not necessarily, let's say, you know, like like deep African and whatnot. She was,
sub-Saharan, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
she was Macedonian. In all intents and purposes,
Mhm.
she was European. But
Yeah.
um, but I mean,
Well,
genetically and historically, I mean, this is what these people were. They came in, the Ptolemies, and they took over Egypt. But
I
even though they're right in the technicality, their, what do you call it? Their bar of like what glues history together should be, um
yeah, that's something that kind of mystifies me. we've got an hour-long documentary, I'm guessing, something like that, half hour, an
A
hour.
Netflix. It's like a Netflix. I haven't seen it, but
Oh, okay. Oh, so that must mean it's a series then.
I don't know.
So
I haven't.
all of this information about the life of Cleopatra, and that's what you focus on? That's all you got? I mean, okay.
Some guy went to the extreme of saying, I don't. And there's a lot of people that are on about this.
Well,
Mind you, these people are not from that culture. Look, these people are speaking from the. It's
I mean,
they're
I
not
get it.
from. They're not even from Egypt. They're talking from Europe. But the fact that now
Mhm.
you're portraying a black person um, in that role, to them, it's an outrage and stuff. Now,
Yeah, I get it. I do. If you are casting a movie on the Navajo code talkers during World War II, your best bet is probably to get as many Native Americans as you can get, preferably Navajo. But if you can't, if for some reason this guy over here is Apache, you're telling me that you can't put him in the movie because he's not a real Navajo? It's probably a good idea to do it. But I
it's
don't know.
called acting at the same time.
If we look back in history, I mean, Anthony Quinn has played Native Americans, he's played Mexicans, he's played Italians, he's played Spaniards. Where was the outrage back then? It was non-existent. The guy's a good actor. That's like being mad that a character in a movie has an accident and loses an arm, and being mad that they didn't cast somebody who was missing an arm for that part. It's like, huh?
It's
What are you
it's
talking about?
it's
You're telling me a normally sighted person cannot play a blind person. That's called acting.
yeah.
You know?
They're so look. They're acting. I may not. I don't. So the idea, I would prefer the most accurate depiction and whatnot.
Yeah,
But
same here.
but at the end of the day, it's a movie or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It's you can always refer to the actual doc. Most people will. My point is this: most people are stuck in this cultural little war on the superficial things, where the information if you were really that invested in the history
Hmm.
of mankind that you wanted, but they don't know. They have a little window that starts and ends, and so their
Yeah.
fight is in this little
Well,
window. Even though there's more on each side of
I think,
information to enrich the mind, so that they can see in all directions a little bit better. Maybe not perfect. Nobody's perfect, but you can see better. They prefer to fight in this little window of
yeah,
ignorance.
it's sad, really. I
Like
mean,
for instance, all these movies. So did the Egyptians and the Romans speak good English? They're all
yeah, they,
speaking English.
they're all speaking English, but nobody's complaining about that. Good point. Excellent point.
Yeah, because if not, we wouldn't be able to even watch movies because they'd have to do it in all the original languages, and so we'd be screwed there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
unless we had to read the subtitles with no. Don't we like the fact that we can hear the audio? You know how
Mhm.
they what do they translate the whatnot?
Yeah, the
Isn't it?
subtitles and what have you. Yeah.
Yeah. So we know that. I mean, so anyways, the point is that there's all these people, all sorts of offended,
Yeah.
and you know how you hear. I
We
guess
really gotta lighten it up. We really gotta take it easy. We really do.
so it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. The whole thing is unfortunate because, but I don't think. How can I say? It's always been true
Hmm.
that you can acquire more understanding by reading. You
Oh
can
yeah.
acquire You can acquire more understanding by
Well,
studying the situation. And then you have movies. And the movies show the history that they want to show due to whatever budgeting and
right,
whatever the script is and this and that. And you have a popular history and then you have a deep dive.
right.
Humanity as a whole is not, as far as I see,
No,
is
we
not
don't have time.
is not deep dive.
We don't have time, or we don't think we have time, unless it's a topic that really, really interests us, and we're ready to make that a focus for a while. We're not going to deep dive. We'll pick the headlines out, and then I'm off onto other things. I don't have time to pay attention to the fact.
And we don't have time.
Mhm,
There's a million topics. I like a few, and the few that I like, I deep
mhm.
dive because I feel like deep diving. The other
Sure.
ones I don't. But and we are culpable of this. But why do I have opinions? And I'm talking about myself, which is indicative of in general people
Mhm.
that are so convincing over things that I have not deep dived into and yet make incredible statements, putting, your foot down saying, no, this is like this. So these people are all sorts of bothered
Well,
by the Black Cleopatra. They're
yeah.
correct due to, well, you don't know who the mother was. They don't know who the mother was, so the mother could easily have been. They don't, but they know that her trajectory, her line was
Well, yeah,
Macedonia.
there weren't a whole heck of a lot of photographs back in those days, so
Right.
But
So,
so everybody is speculating.
well, no, the Macedonians
Mhm.
were. So here's the thing: the category of Macedonian falls within what we call Europe today,
Right.
and and so it's a particular people group.
Well, yeah, I know because that's where my father's DNA, his ancient DNA, went back to
Right.
was
So
what is now Macedonia.
right. So this is what we call people of the original peoples of Europe.
Mhm.
Right. So then there's this racial category that people um, view the world through in order to make sense of groups and whatnot and this and that.
Yeah.
And so when you say that Cleopatra was, sub-Saharan African, um, historically that's not what it points to. It could have been.
Yeah.
Um, Genetically, they don't know about her, but they know that. So
I
that's why
just
they have a problem. But they don't know further
I think it's
than what their window is.
I think it's a lot of hoo-ha about nothing really because
Yeah.
let's think about it. You don't have anything bad to say about this documentary series. All you're upset about is who they put in that role in that documentary. That's what you have that's the only thing you can find wrong.
Due to her
Now,
color.
it may not be a big thing to me, but it may be a big thing to somebody else. Okay, that's fine, but really?
But I don't think that I would, unless I'm thinking in terms of fantasy,
Mhm.
I wouldn't much appreciate that. It almost feels like, to the point of the people that are complaining, but my
Mhm.
complaining isn't the same as their complaining.
Yeah.
My complaining is a mirror.
Well,
And well, let me just say that my complaining is that, well, I agree with them that,
mhm.
well, portray it as accurately as you can. Why strive to create
Yeah.
something and waste so much energy just to prove a today point
Yeah, because now
due,
you have to go out and defend your decisions and all this other kind of stuff. And yeah,
due to cultural things today when you're
right.
doing a thing? So that argument I get, but that's a personal. But these people, you know, I
Well,
mean,
it also depends on how it's done. For instance, if they were casting a movie about your life, okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, somebody's going to do a biography on Eloy Escojedo, and they put me as your father, and I have to try to fake a Spanish accent. No, that ain't happening. That ain't working. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, go for a little bit of accuracy here, but
Well,
I don't
well.
know.
So using
So
using
that could also be considered an insult.
not to Cubans at all. Are you
Uh,
kidding me?
yeah, I
I
think
will
that's
tell you what. I will tell you what is an no. I should know better than
yeah,
I should know
you
better than
would,
you.
but I mean,
Uh,
it's
no,
cringy
but
to me, man.
well, I agree. I agree. It's cringy. Do it
Mm,
the best way possible. But however, you're assuming a lot of things that you shouldn't assume, and
maybe.
you're assuming a lot of things that you shouldn't assume because it's perfectly reasonable. Okay. Well, there's a level at which
Mhm.
something is distasteful
That's what I'm
because
getting at.
but yes, there's a level at which something is distasteful in that by bringing it up, um sleeping understandings that are sleeping and at rest and comfortably nestled in their beds in the collective consciousness of the world, or of your local area or of the greater country, is disturbed, and there's a little bit of a cringe flow to it.
Mhm.
But to explain, of your assuming the language thing, it is true, but there's plenty of, so if you're talking about language, there's plenty of Cubans that speak without a Cuban accent.
Okay.
It's not burnt in to the world, but there is a popular go-to Cuban accent that is not, as far as I'm aware, is not mine, but it could be, and I'm not aware of it. But there is a popular go-to
Yeah,
Cuban accent.
I don't
Now,
hear an accent at all. But
well, well, but see, these are the complications that I'm saying. So, number one, I'm not Cuban.
mhm.
Although we started the first half of our thing that not only am I enveloped
Mhm.
in the city that is the home to the exile community of Cubans, and although my parents are are truly born
Mhm.
in Cuba, and
Mhm.
although I would, when going over to grandma's house and this and that, so this category of Cuban, um, I'm not trying to. I'm just being. I'm just
Yeah,
exploring
I
this thing. Although this category of Cuban exists in my mind the way it exists, but exists in your mind to whatever level it exists in your mind and in multiple people's minds. Fundamentally, the, the 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 starting point of the word Cuban, definition wise, is a person that's born
right.
in Cuba. But if we were to if we were to extrapolate from there, you could say it's a culture too. There is a Cuban culture,
Sure.
but
Sure.
then you could extrapolate from there and then go into the category that I wanted to go in, which is some sort of racial aspect
Okay.
concerning a certain look, concerning a certain breed of human being, and that's not. It's emphatically,
Well,
scientifically, historically not true.
well,
I'm not. I'm
just
not. I'm not raining on your parade. I'm just trying to say something here. Let me just wrap it up with this. Well, go ahead. Go ahead, because I just remembered.
I was not going anywhere near that at all. I was
No, but I.
talking about, well, hold on, but I was talking about portraying your father as your father. Casting me as your father would not work because I am nothing like him. I don't have the same hair
Daddy,
color. I
daddy.
don't I don't speak the language,
Mhm.
and you yourself told me that he did have a strong Spanish accent.
Yeah.
So I would have to fake that, and that could be seen
Yeah.
not only as cringy but as an insult
No, no,
to
no. And I
some
agreed.
people.
I agreed with
So
you. I agreed with you.
so
Remember,
okay, all right.
remember,
That's
remember.
all I was getting. It wasn't on a racial level. It was on a
No, no,
uh,
no.
100% personal level.
I
I
agreed,
couldn't be your dad.
but you heard that I agreed with you at the beginning.
Okay.
But I'm going somewhere else so I
Oh,
can get
okay.
to
All
where
right. All right.
I know it's
Okay.
a little bit of a
Well,
long
no,
thing.
I just wanted to clear that up for anybody out there who might be thinking something else.
Oh no, absolutely.
Mhm.
Now, so going rewinding to the little place where I was. So this category of Cuban, like I said, here in Miami, all these Cubans around, the meals are Cuban. My parents are Cuban. Um, the food that I would sit at with grandparents and all these things that we talked about, bars on the window, all these layers of stuff called Cuban or Cuban adjacent, right? What my understanding is about that
Mm-hmm.
ha- tops tops off
Mm-hmm.
in areas that may or may not top off for you or for other people from your particular perspectives of the world
Mm-hmm.
at large.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get at, and I've got a secondary thing, what I'm trying to get at is that the category, and it's not so to be nuanced. I'm not trying to just for the to be like shameful. I'm not trying to be like shameful or separating. I'm just saying I'm
Mm-hmm.
not Cuban. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Not period. Let's take the period. I'm not Cuban by its specific definition, which means that you are born in Cuba, and I'm
Right.
not Cuban by any culturally.
Mm-hmm.
I have a huge amounts of Cuban influence, but I'm
Sure.
not. But a Cuban may or may not have my level. Another random Cuban out there, um, or Cuban derived person, or someone born of Cuban parents, they may or may not have my looks,
Mm-hmm.
my speaking pattern, my political alignment, my mental. But they could be as African or as blonde, and that's not even a stretch.
Yeah.
That's not even a stretch. Um, but it is in the minds, and I know it's sort of it's to other people because they fall under a category of this thing called the Hispanic world and whatnot, which is a total other thing. But if you've ever watched, so here's the thing: if they did that and played a movie like you're saying, and then they had you play my dad and stuff, it doesn't work. Well, number
No.
one, I look like my dad
Yeah.
right out the gates.
Yeah.
I mean, I am my dad's
Well,
son.
that's what I mean.
No, well, no, you were talking about the language thing, but
Well, yeah.
the blonde.
Mhm.
Um, but it would. I hope they wouldn't do that. It would be like a popular representation of the thing and this and that. It's not accurate. But I'll give you a good example of just that you were saying. In the 1980s, they made a movie called Scarface, and
Yeah.
they took the Scarface name from Al Capone,
Mm-hmm.
and they created this guy that came from Cuba,
Mm-hmm.
played by Al Pacino,
Pacino.
which he's not Cuban. He's
Mm-hmm.
Italian
Mm-hmm.
or of Italian heritage. And they started filming in Miami. They hired, that I know of, one Cuban,
Mm-hmm.
which was Mr. Echevarria.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only Cuban in the thing um, that I'm aware of. There might be some other, but he's like the one, and he was his hand man. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. Cubans here argued or did not like it so much that they had to move their whole production to LA.
Really?
Yeah, the Cubans said, no, you're not going to paint us like you've done with other groups
Mm-hmm.
because we're not a bunch of criminals and this and that, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not having it. And the pressure was so harsh that they sent the film crew to LA. So they had
Mm-hmm.
to do all the little cafes and whatnot
Mm-hmm.
in LA style.
Oh, man.
So when you watch the movie, you could see it that
Mm-hmm.
it's pretending to be Miami. If you're from Miami, you're a little slightly like, is that that's where would that be? But another thing that they did is that they now had to hire other groups to play the Cubans, and there's a camp scene. And I don't want to get too much into it, but there's difference in groups. And if you watch the movie, um, the people that they hired were indigenous people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not the story in a general sense. Um, so if we're talking about physical looks and whatnot, um, you see what I'm saying?
I do.
But the movie was a success. But
Yeah.
for the average person looking out, they could make a whole bunch of assumptions about what Cubans are and what they're not, or any other group, depending on the people that play. But at the end of the day, I
Mhm.
enjoy the movie very much. But when I see certain scenes like buildings and stuff, and when he's out in the
And
courtyard
that ain't
playing
no
basketball,
Miami.
right? But I know it's a movie.
Mhm.
If I wanted the real history, I would look and study the books
Well,
and documentation.
yeah, you'd be looking for documentaries and books and things like that. You wouldn't be watching something starring Al Pacino. So, yeah,
Right.
it's like, people watching Mary Poppins to get an eye as to what London looks like. That's not the way it is. And then you have to sit through Dick Van Dyke trying to mug his way through it with a Cockney accent, which didn't work either. I
But
lasted
it's
about
still
3 minutes with
enjoyable.
that. I lasted about 3 minutes with that movie. I could not watch it. I could not watch it just because of Dick Van Dyke trying to fake a Cockney accent. It's like, good lord.
See, it
So
doesn't. It
I've so
doesn't.
I've never seen the whole thing.
I mean, I have one when I was younger. But the point is that there's this movie popular
Hmm.
thing. We know it's that, and some
Yeah,
people have distaste for certain things, and these distastes is because of the norms we understand, and so they don't have to watch and this and that. But to insinuate that all of culture is being shifted because of a movie, there's still actual books and stuff that actually portray the story in depth.
yeah. Linda says I won't watch Braveheart because they played Irish pipes, not Scottish. There's
And,
always that one person.
and the other thing, so that was the one thing. I mean, it's always a complicated thing because
It is.
and there is a
But
cringe
well,
there's a cringe factor. So look, with this whole thing, there's a cringe factor because
it is.
at the same time, yes, it's true they're playing this, and all information suggests that Cleopatra was X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of freaking evidence that suggests that.
Well,
Um, it's just a movie.
if you're presenting a documentary, the onus is on you to try to be as accurate as you can. If you are presenting a TV series or a mini series that is fiction, then that's different. Did you ever see the mini series Shogun?
I remember it, but I don't remember sitting and watching it.
Okay, it takes place in feudal Japan. Okay, and the European actors were Europeans, the Japanese actors were Japanese. If they would have set that in Boston, it would have been a problem. But they were trying, it was not a documentary, but they were trying to be as historically accurate as they could because this is supposed to be Japan in the 15 or 1600s. So let's be as accurate as possible. And they did a fairly good job. Now, like I said, if they would have cast the thing in Boston and had a bunch of people dressed up to be Japanese, that would have been an issue. I think if you're going to do a docudrama based on, if you're going to do a documentary on the Beatles, you don't film it in Paris. You go to Liverpool.
Unless that portion of the movie where they actually did in history go to Paris for that one time.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't start with Paul McCartney growing up as a kid and shoot that in Paris with a
Right.
bunch of people with thick French accents. You go to Liverpool and you try to be as accurate as you can, you know. And I
Right.
think as a documentary maker, that is your job. Your job is to be as accurate as you can. And unless you put up some sort of, some of the portrayals in this documentary were performed by such and such, so and so, whatever, you know. But
Yeah.
You try to be as accurate as you can. And I think if you're not doing that, you're not making a documentary. You're kind of half stepping on it. Just my opinion. That means absolutely nothing.
The lady, I think, was the director.
Hmm.
I'm paraphrasing
Hmm.
for this Cleopatra thing. Said
Hmm.
that when she was growing up, her grandma said, "When you go to school, don't let anybody tell you that Cleopatra wasn't black. Don't you?
Oh,
You don't care what they were." That she used that in a because it became a this whole thing. Well, look, two things. One, we can pick from endless amounts of controversies that occur
sure.
daily. So
Sure.
we're just focusing on this one for whatever. So
Sure.
that's one. So there's plenty of controversies for everything. So that's one. Two, this particular controversy that affects X amount of people who want to talk about this thing, their focus is that I said roughly. There's more to it, but there's roughly that, and their fear is this whole notion of culture and it being taken and shifted and this and
I,
that.
I,
But these people, but here's the thing. But these very same people are extending the horizons of their what includes their culture on their end. Not I'm not talking about the African side of it. I'm talking about this European derived side of it. They're extending their notion of what encompasses their world. If you divided, um, according to certain people's notions of what European is, what European culture isn't, what the West is, what the West isn't,
mhm,
that territory starts to shrink until you arrive at a area that encompasses maybe one or two countries. And
mhm.
there's plenty of anecdotal and actual, that shows. So people, and I've mentioned this, have a shifting goalpost category problem when it comes to just about, I don't want to say everything, but I did say just about as much as you can imagine concerning topics. They extend the arm to include themselves in a greater pool when it's convenient,
Sure.
and then they reduce the pool when it's not convenient. So anything in the outskirts of what was um, the ancient world was part of the Mediterranean. It wasn't some other. It extended into places that were not even necessarily considered, or by many people's standards in the recent few hundred years, as European to begin with. And those very same people um, are they're included when it's art and writing and poetry and knowledge and
Hmm.
what and math, but then they're separated when it comes to. So there's always this thing. So there is fault with these people over here, but those people that are critiquing it do have a point
Well,
at the same time. It's just that everybody's screwed, is what I'm trying to get at.
hmm.
They're all looking at it, what this is, as something. One group is trying to pretend certain things, and the other group is also pretending, but they're being accurate in the one thing that they're focused on. So
Yeah.
it's like,
But
it's a,
but I think it's a stretch, no matter who you cast in that role. I think it's a stretch to say that you're stealing our culture or that we're losing our culture. I think it's a stretch.
oh yeah, it's a total stretch because there's not
So,
there's no solid border of you
yeah,
can't.
and that's why I'm saying you watch the entire series and that's the only thing you can find wrong, then how is that stealing your culture? How is that degrading your culture? I don't get it. I don't. Then again, I haven't looked into this. I've never seen the series, so I don't know what their main complaint is. But if that's the main complaint, I think it's an overreaction.
That's the one that stuck out to me. I think
Yeah.
that it was, but let me say the second one. I didn't know this until I didn't this I didn't look up at all. But
Okay.
did you know that tea bags were invented in the United States?
Tea bags were invented in the United States? No, I did not know that, but okay.
Well, I saw a little mini video. That's why I'm saying I didn't look into it deeper. But I saw a little.
Hmm.
It was a British guy, and he says, "Let me tell you, Americans, what would anger British people to no end, and I'm going to give you that secret right now." And I was watching that video. It's one of those quick videos,
Mm-hmm.
And it was curious. I said, and this is a British guy. I don't think that he
Mm-hmm.
was pretending. And he says, I'll tell you what it is. And so you can use it too. And he said, tell a British person that, did you know that you drink tea every day, but those tea pouches, that was invented in the United States of America. And he says, and it's not the fact that it was invented in the United States of America that would piss them off. He says, I'll tell you what would piss them off. It's that they drink tea so much that every time they got a new little packet of tea, they would remember that fact, and that would piss them off to no end. Just the idea of it coming to mind every time that they drop the tea.
Uh, it,
And he says,
they were invented in 1908 in New York by a man by the name of Thomas Sullivan.
yeah, hilarious.
Yep.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Where is Jamie Page when we need him? Where is Jamie Page when we need him? Wow.
Well, but then again, it wasn't tea something that came from, like, you know,
Well,
China.
from Asia, from China,
Yeah.
yeah. Until the British smuggled some out and sent it to India, and then it
Yeah.
suddenly became cheap enough for the English to get it. But that's okay. Here's another little secret. Um, a lot of Brits get upset when Americans call it soccer instead of football. The word soccer attached to the game they call football
Mhm.
was invented in the UK. And that's what we called it over here when we brought the sport over here.
Interesting.
And then they went back to calling it football. So it went in, then it went out over there. And as we like to do over here, we just said, yeah, we're sticking with soccer. We've got another game we call football.
Yeah.
So
I just those are little facts. Oh, just before because I know that we're rounding home now.
Yeah.
Um, you, I guess we should just say the thing. I just want to share this with you guys, and Mark went deeper into it, so I'll just brief overview, and then you can expand because I didn't research what you did, and we'll see what happens from there. Just as a final topper here. Um, so check this out, guys. It just so happened that there's a store, very popular store here in the United States called Payless Shoes. And Payless Shoes is sort of like middle of the road, average people to purchase shoes kind of store. And so people go there in malls and outlets everywhere and they buy these shoes. And they're regularly priced, fairly priced, if you can say that.
$20, $30, something like that. Yeah.
Something like that within the 20-30 range so that people can use footwear and inexpensively, roughly. Well, that company decided to test something out. And what they decided was that they were going to open up this store with the same shoe products, rebranded and make it look like some European fancy schmancy thing, and charge like I don't know how many more times expensive.
Yeah.
The idea was to make it look as upscale as possible and see if people for the same item were willing to purchase something more expensive just because it was packaged luxurious like. And what they found was that people couldn't help themselves, but they wanted it. And I'll just round it off. You have to see the little video and stuff, but it blew my mind because it speaks a lot to people. Mark?
I did dig into that a little bit further. They closed down one Payless store and they rebranded it and they called it Palessi.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it look like this real expensive boutique. And they took their standard Payless shoes and put them into different packaging. And they said some of them they priced up to 1,800% higher.
Mm-hmm.
So you had shoes that were selling for $20, they marked them at $600. And then they invited a bunch of influencers to come along and check it out. These were real people These were not actors. They just came in, they looked at it, and oh my God, look at this. Gloria, it's beautiful. And yeah, da, da, and oh, I would wear this to any red carpet event, and this, that, and the other. And within about 10 minutes, the first person came up and bought a pair of $30 shoes and paid $600 for them. Now, as these people were leaving, folks stopped them, gave them their money back, and told them what was really going on, and then let them keep the shoes for free.
They must have felt like jerks.
And they were all like, "Oh, are you kidding me? This is Payless shoes?" Yes.
Hmm.
But it was more about I don't know if they meant to make a statement on conspicuous consumption or not, but it did kind of illustrate the phoniness and the shallowness in some people, which was really, which really does come with conspicuous consumption, you know.
Yeah.
And you can go on about, well, the Coach bag. Rich people don't buy Coach bags. There's some might, but that stuff is not sold to the rich. It's not marketed to the rich. It's marketed to middle class mopes like you and me who want to appear to be more important or more wealthy than we actually are.
I live within my means or below my means.
Well, when you stop and think about it, there was a book. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember when it
And
came out. It
and
was
you
in the
could take that to the bank.
1990s. Yeah, you could take it to the bank. There was a book that came out in the 1990s called "The Stealth Millionaires: The Millionaire Next Door," and it was two men. I don't remember their name. They basically they interviewed like, oh my gosh, 2,000 people that have a net worth of $1 million or more, and this is back in the 90s. So these people were living very, very well to do. And they found well, the conclusion that they came to was these people became wealthy not by spending it, but by living frugally, well below their means.
Hmm.
They didn't go out and buy brand new vehicles on credit. They would rather pay cash for a used car. So they didn't take the depreciation hit on it. And
Right.
they didn't buy anything on credit. The generally speaking, the exception being a mortgage on a home.
Right.
They didn't wear designer labels. They went to, just middle of the road stores at the
Hmm.
time, like Sears or something like that. And so you don't make money and accumulate wealth by spending money, was the lesson that they were talking about. The guy that drives the Jag, that Jag doesn't mean he has money. It means he has higher car payments,
Hmm.
basically. They say on average, they drove a 5-year-old car, and Buicks were real popular. Don't know why, but most of them drove 5-year-old on average Buicks. It's the people who want to try to portray themselves to be in a higher economic class than they really are. They're the ones that all this stuff is marketed to.
So so many lessons from that thing, and I think, can you find that one extended video?
Yeah,
And
I
maybe,
will find it and I'll put it over on the Trampled Underfoot podcast Facebook page. Um, and so give me about 10 minutes after we're done live here, and I'll go track it down and find it,
so
because it was pretty interesting. I mean, it was about 7-8 minutes long, but it had a lot of interesting little opinions in there.
well, so the idea that, do you remember that movie, Clash of the Titans?
Vaguely, I saw it years ago once.
Do you remember when they, at the beginning or at some point, they take the little statue of the protagonist and they place him in a little miniature arena and lay him down, and then that little statue that Zeus placed down there becomes the real man. In other words, the gods have control
Okay,
over the.
yeah, yeah. I think I remember that.
Okay, so this one aspect of this whole thing, each one, it's
Mhm.
almost like you have been grabbed and placed into the world that we live in and been conjured up and are surrounded by people making judgment calls based on bull crap, on
Mhm.
what quality is, on bull crap, on what well, quality value is, on bull
Mhm.
crap. You can go down the list of people. You don't have a place in the steering wheel seat, driver's seat of another person's mind to know, but this
Right.
video test shows the propensity to if it occurs in that fashion because a label looks fancy,
Mhm.
it just it just makes you think how many people their values levels, and nobody's perfect, we all have screwed up,
Right.
or variations on a theme, but and how many times have you seen a guitar because it has a, or me, it has a certain, well, then again, I know what a Fender guitar feels like and I like the quality, but just the same, something like a shoe, or it could be any other item, and to attribute quality to it without second guessing because you're observing the propaganda that's being placed in front of you and the peer pressure element of social status. To me, it it can't get, well, it can get much worse, but it's pretty low. um it's horrible. It's such an
Well,
insulting. um People should be ashamed of themselves. There's many things
well,
people should be ashamed of, but this is one of them. My
well. It's
goodness.
it's that whole thing about perceived value and perceived luxury. I met, like I said, I'm a recovering real estate agent, and I met through a fellow agent, the friend of a friend of a friend kind of a thing, a fellow that works for Nike. And he was buying a house down here. Nike Shoes is headquartered here in Oregon. And this one executive wanted to purchase down here, and I met him through somebody. I didn't represent him. And I said something about the price of Nike shoes, and he just got a smile on his face. And what? He said, well, he says, I may be shooting myself in the foot here, no pun intended. He said, but let me tell you a little bit about Nike shoes and pricing. And now this was, I want to say 2014, 2015, somewhere in that area there. He says, basically put, when you get to about the $125 level, they're all basically the same. They may have different colors, they may have different textures, but they're all basically the same. And I said, okay, but that doesn't talk about the $600 ones. He says, we have to do it. We have to sell six, seven, eight, and $1,000 shoes because people will buy them. We would be foolish not to.
Hmm.
And in fact, they will do something like they'll do an exclusive run. They'll get an athlete to do an exclusive run with their name on it and make 1,000 pairs of these shoes. So there's only 1,000 of them going worldwide, and that'll bring an even higher price because everybody's got to get paid.
Hmm.
But the
Yeah.
way he put it to me was, we have to sell those shoes because people will buy them. And if we didn't do it, we'd be foolish. We'd be foolish to turn it down.
There's a difference between, let's say, you have two doohickeys, and I don't want to use the brand names, but let's say in the world of like tools and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
you have two similar or like items. One of them is like twice the amount, the other one not so much. For this example, just
Mm-hmm.
for this example, within the parameters of this
Mm-hmm.
example, because there's
Right.
other variation. I'm just using one example
Right.
to
Gotcha.
justify pricing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that you would disagree, but we'll see. Well, actually, I've heard you kind of agree in a different, but we'll see. You could buy the cheaper one, but if you have already experienced it coming apart, and you're like, well, hot dog, why is this stupid? I mean, I did save money, but now I have to buy another one, which
Right.
and the other one is like the more expensive one, and it lasts. You could then
Right.
genuinely, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, if you're talking about a difference in quality, but then again, we get into perceived value. It's like buying a first class plane ticket versus buying an economy ticket. You're both going to the same place. You're both going to get there at the same time. Your seat's going to be a little bit bigger, but we're both going to go see Mickey at Disneyland at about the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is I paid $300 for my ticket and you paid $3,000 for yours.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get $2,700 worth of value out of that seat because you're closer to the plane, closer to the front of the plane? All that means to me is you're going to hit the ground before I do.
But there are vanity,
So, yes, there is. Some
you
people
know,
don't want to be caught dead out anywhere but first class.
but
And the airline has to sell that seat because people will buy it.
okay, both of our examples are good examples,
Mm-hmm.
but they, in my esteem, shamefully fall below the experiment that these people did, because there is an element of, it's a very special video,
Mm-hmm.
because my goodness, Mark, they go into a store, the pretentiousness that we talk about, or that
Yes.
you talk about in the past, of these people, they know it all, they are on top of the world in their mind, they there's all these elements going on of like richness and wealth and fame and popularity and clique grouping. I'm in the
Yes.
in group, and we're the fancy schmancy, and this, there's all these things, and you can even hear some people talking, well, yes, it's like being in Paris, or it's like the, like there's
Mm.
all, and my the hairs, like the goosebumps, when I saw that, and they're full of crap.
Yeah.
How, that should be the number one video, or at
Well,
least the number 10 on YouTube.
they're pandering to an audience. They're pandering to their audience. Their audience wants them for that. That's why the audience watches them, is for that pretentiousness.
It's so,
And this is what this is an example of what I meant by self-centeredness, egocentric, not egotistical, but egocentric.
mhm.
In that we, oh no, I can't wear that t-shirt. It's from Walmart. Well, who says it's from Walmart? This one, as a matter of fact, now that I'm looking at it, this one's from Tractor Supply. Even worse, you know.
Actually, there's something, it's weird. So for some reason, that's acceptable as normal. Anywhere you go in the United States, that's
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's just a normal person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's something that grounds it due to like the car
Mm-hmm.
insignia. It's like, comfortable on a, on your way type of clothing. And yet, so there's a safety feature. There's a safe. So you don't have. You're not. You don't. You don't have to. You're not being fancy. So you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
protecting yourself from this. Imagine if you came out with like this zipper, like what you talked about, zipper thing all the time. There's also an you have to have some nuts on you to wear certain things. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I do. I do.
But yet there's
But
people that forego that because for some reason there's this popularity thing going on. It's so, and as kids, I understand it
mm-hmm.
because kids are liable to do such
Oh,
things.
sure.
But as an adult, I don't know. Maybe there's horses for courses.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to that, but there are some people that refuse to buy a $20 t-shirt. They refuse to buy a $20 t-shirt. They would much rather go
Mm-hmm.
and spend 60 at a different store.
You
Never
want,
mind, it's the same label.
Mark, you want to know what I thought when you threw out that number, that
Mm-hmm.
$20 number? And
What?
I thought to myself, dude, you're breaking the bank every other month if you're doing that kind of expenditure on a shirt.
You don't see the 2 6-packs of Fruit of the Loom t-shirts I just bought for $9.99. You see the one with the logo on it, which tells you that this is a licensed product, and so therefore it paid $20 for a t-shirt. But you can go to some of these other stores. You can go to Macy's and pay $60 for the same shirt.
I will tell you this: I have, well, I have zero with like my whole. I don't want to, I don't want to be. You could say I underdress pretty significantly, but let's put that to the side. And especially in the neighborhood that I, people there's a little bit of that or a good amount of that. I am totally like, well, I mean, this is pretty fancy in my regard here. I don't have to spend. The only reason I would spend more on a shirt, like let's say a cheap bottom tier shirt, and I saw it, the only reason I wouldn't buy it is if the material, the cotton or the stretchiness was off. Because there's some that are like, oh, no, this is not for me.
100% polyester. Yeah. Oh no.
Those are the only ones I would say no to and go to the higher price. But on account of some fashion thing, I don't think so.
Well, it depends though, but we're looking backwards now. Okay. We're looking at our lives in reverse now.
Yeah.
When you were 22, 23 and out to impress a girl, you wouldn't be caught dead in that stuff. Then you do dress differently. So it depends on the occasion. It depends on what's going on. Because I was the same way. I didn't dress like I dress now when I was out to impress some little sweet thing.
I was pretty always, unless it was a special place to go, I dress up accordingly, but I was not.
We were a little bit more well groomed, me especially. Took care of our appearance a little bit more.
I was skinnier.
I mean, come on, face it, man. 2/3 of the things men do, we do for women. And that's all there is to it. Men don't care about having a nice house. They know women do. So men want a nice house. If a man thought he had a chance with a woman and he lived in a cardboard box, he'd never leave that cardboard box. Most men don't really care about fancy cars. They know women do. So men want fancy cars. Men don't care about the latest hair care products or the nicest clothes. They know women do. So they get the latest hair care products and the fancier clothes. But left to their own resources, guys will lounge around in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt all day long, wearing flip-flops and not combing their hair for a week.
Yeah, that sounds like paradise to me. Then again, we don't know the numbers on that, but it sounds right to me. It sounds accurate to me. It sounds as accurate as you can be.
Just be observant as you're walking around. The younger they are, the more dashing and debonair they dress. The older they are, the less likely they are to do that because they figure they got nobody to impress but themselves.
One of the best inventions ever was rock and roll. And I'll tell you why. Because even when not put music to the side, when it comes to the fashion, remember the greasers? Well, from that movie that you like, it was roughly grease it and rock it with your shirt, sleeves rolled up, jeans, simple. So not only do you get the benefits of, in hindsight, boy, that's cool, but it's also simple. It's perfect. You get to be an acceptable look with the minimal. It's perfect.
Yeah. You put all your money into your car, and white t-shirt and pair of blue jeans, grease the hair back, off you went.
It's
If
crazy.
you were more rebellious, you wore the leather jacket and you rode a motorcycle.
Yeah.
It was all rebellion. It was the anti, I'm not in a button up shirt. You won't see a tie on me. None of that kind of stuff, you know. And the greaseback hair and everything, that was the rebellion against the rigid haircut that your dad had.
Yeah. So that did away with a lot of the, you know,
Mm.
dress up this and this and that, So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just threw that in there. Are we ready to,
Well,
to land this?
Jim Dockrell says if I was single and could afford a Mercedes, I'd have one. And if I was single, I probably could afford a Mercedes. Well, there is that.
You know
So
what? That is a good point. There are vanity points and stuff. If you
mhm.
look at if you this is my critique of it or my view. If everything is to impress at the shallowest extreme, then there's a teeter totter there that's balancing in a direction that is unappealing to me. If you have vanity points, you like a fast motorcycle, a fast car, you have certain things, but it balances out with like you're a down to earth person. I think that that's a more balanced thing, but that's my critique or my criteria. Yeah,
Well, look at the number of people that traded in the Camaro on a minivan after they got married and started having kids.
yeah,
The Camaro was there to attract the girl. Well, you got the girl, now you got a family. Can't get them from point A to point B in the back seat of a Camaro. Time to get a minivan.
yeah.
You know?
And a shirt, "World's Greatest Dad" on
Yep,
the.
that's it. And the little stick figure kids in the back window. Oh, that's mom with the SUV. Take that back. Okay, I'm ready to land the plane. Sorry, just had to add that in.
All right, so well, I'm glad we got all that in there because boy, um, we sure do take a journey around the globe every now and then. So
Yes, we
um,
do.
we go live every Tuesday at 6:30 Western time and 9:30 Eastern time. I had to make a little U-turn there, and we have a show here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast at YouTube, as well as over on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. And we post stuff that we talk about over there, so be sure to check that out. And we have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and check out that Wayback Machine button that has our past episodes on there. And we're also sponsored by.
Harneal Media, your web solution. Some of you may have noticed that Steve is not in the chat today. He's okay. No issue there. He's got some family things going on. He couldn't join us tonight. But maybe he's out of sight, but he's not out of mind. So if you're looking to create or improve your web presence, maybe you want to start a web store, maybe you just want to put up a blog, maybe you are starting up a company and want to get your name out there. There's no better way to do it than with a website. And Harneal Media is the place to go. 100% personalized service. When you deal with Harneal Media, you deal with Steve. You don't deal with some nameless, faceless individual in a call center that you'll never talk to again in your life. He's competitively priced and he's good at what he does. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
And we'd also like to mention that the opinions expressed here in the show are not the opinions of the sponsor. Just leave that floating there.
Yeah.
All right. Except that in a fancy schmancy production, you wouldn't hear the host cracking up when they say that.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Um,
Okay. I found that video. I'm off to Facebook to post that on our Trampled Underfoot podcast page. So head over to Facebook, look for Trampled Underfoot podcast. That's us. And you'll find this video where you can check it out.
all right. You guys have a great week. Enjoy yourselves. Be safe, and we'll catch you next time. See you.
Peace.